Christian XC1 review covering Las Vegas and the world. Yesterday we had a three-person boxing panel on the upcoming Manny Pacquiao Barrios fight that takes place next weekend here in Las Vegas. Behind us today is the Chinatown Plaza. Today we're going to replay the second half of that boxing panel yesterday, where we just spoke with Bernstein, boxing historian, on a variety of topics, including Jake Paul, the Pacquiao-Barrios fight, Floyd Mayweather, women's boxing, and a variety of other topics. Here is that full C1 interview we had with Bernstein right after the boxing panel yesterday. I hope you enjoy it.
I'd love to add just a couple of things. They were going back and forth, and you know how it is, trainers, fighters going back and forth, and then we in the media just kind of have to be the onlookers there. So I just want to get in a couple for you because you're the greatest. You and like a couple others, that's all that's left of the great sport of boxing. Like if I was going to ask somebody for their first word on the sport of boxing, it would be you. I hope you know that always. And I admire and appreciate all the stuff you've done with us all over the years on C1 interviews. So let's just talk about three more quickly. First, state of boxing right now, in your opinion.
Well, it's fluid in some ways. You know, you have to look at it from two different ways. The quality of the boxing is exceptionally good. The matchmaking in boxing has been really pretty good in the last several years and has gotten even better in the last 2 years. So the actual product that the sport is putting out there, in my opinion, is a very good one. So from that standpoint, boxing is in pretty good shape. However, what makes it fluid right now is the delivery of that product. How is it delivered? Is it being delivered in a way that fans can A, afford it, or B, find it? And will that will the business side of it start to affect whether matches can be made? Right now, a number of the major entities in boxing are up in the air. Top Rank Boxing lost its. Now, some of these things are endemic to America and don't apply to the rest of the world. But America is a big part of the boxing equation, obviously. We see Top Rank looking for a TV partner. The PBC partnership with Amazon, I think you can't possibly look at that partnership and say it has fully blossomed, because it hasn't. It just hasn't. They haven't put on many fights. Almost all of the ones they're doing, like the Pacquiao ones, are pay-per-views, and it hasn't become a partnership the way I'm sure the PBC people would have thought it was. So they're in a little bit of a state of flux, and there's some question about whether that partnership is even going to continue. Then the elephant in the room, the Riyadh season folks who are pumping all the money in the world into boxing and for the most part controlling a lot of the big matches. They are entrenched with DAZN, and DAZN is one of the constants. And I don't think anybody would have said this 6-7 years ago when DAZN was a fledgling, entity. They are kind of the constant in boxing. So the question you ask yourself, and it's a legitimate question, if the major distributor of boxing is digital and is available worldwide, so that part's very good. But it's not a traditional over-the-air kind of network. What does that do to the sport? And they've put on great matches, in my opinion. But now their mantra of saying, "Well, don't worry about pay-per-views because you're going to pay us a subscription, and we're going to give you all these great fights." They are giving you really good fights, but there's still a lot that are pay-per-views. So all of that has boxing in a place where I think it's very fluid, because not the average fan isn't sure where to access fights in many instances, and in some cases the cost of constantly buying pay-per-views is difficult for them. The fight last night on Netflix was and the fact that the Crawford Canelo fight is going to be on Netflix gives, I think, boxing fans and the people in boxing some interesting opportunities, because should Netflix become a major player in boxing, given the vast, they're essentially just like Showtime or HBO, because they're bigger than both of those, right? Bigger than either HBO or Showtime, who of course were in boxing for a long time, and they would give boxing a pretty good window, a big window to the world. So we'll see. There's fluidity in the way it's being distributed and how people can get it. But the irony of that, as I point out, is that the actual quality of what boxing's giving is very good.
Okay, I got three for you because I just got to have you. You got to ask them while you're here. I mean, when you get Al Bernstein in front of you, you have questions. So let me just ask you just a couple, and thanks so much for continuing to be here. Love Gary, love Bob. Trainer, fighter, back and forth. Who's going to win? It's like, yeah, we're just sitting there waiting for them to be like, yeah, give us a minute. We have something to say too, right? What do you think, Manny, compared to when George Foreman fought in his 40s and Bernard Hopkins? What do you think?
Well, I think different because Foreman, when he decided to come back, he had a very specific plan. He came back in his early 40s, and he came back at about the age where Manny was leaving the sport, and before Manny just now decided to come back. He had a systematic plan. He fought on USA against tune-up type opponents. Then he fought in some. I announced several of the fights he did with kind of grizzled veterans on very small top-ranked pay-per-views, and he built himself using his personality and these wins to get himself to the point where he could fight for a world title, which he did against Evander Holyfield, and he lost that one in an amazing battle, but ultimately was able to get the title against Michael Moore. Bernard Hopkins never stopped, right? He got a late start in boxing because of his issues being in prison, and he continued all the way through his 40s. So both of those fighters were very different than what Manny Pacquiao is doing now. This is a fighter who, in his early 40s, left the sport. Certainly we saw he wasn't quite the fighter he had been before, which is not shocking when you're in your early 40s. And now here he is trying to come back after this long layoff. Now, he didn't come back at age 46 and decide to fight, a really lower level opponent. He's fighting a good fighter in Mario Barrios. Now, they have calculated, and I think this is the whole one of the major questions about this fight. One of the interesting points. They've calculated that Barrios is vulnerable enough for them and has that title, which a lot of people have titles in boxing these days. They've calculated that in their mind, this is almost like a tune-up fight, right? We're not facing Brian Norman. We're not facing some other Devlin Haney. We're not facing those kind of people here. And they might be right, but nonetheless, it's a different situation than Foreman and Hopkins had.
Okay, so then here's what I'm going to say to you. Looking at this whole thing, I mean, what do you think is there an advantage, do you think, for not fighting for almost 4 years in Manny's case, or is that just, it could go either way? It could either be really good or really bad.
I think there would have been an advantage for him not fighting for a year or 18 months, to settle his body and give himself a rest. Not fighting for 4 years is a different kettle of fish because you're that much older. It's that much longer a layoff. So I don't see it in any configuration as a super plus. I don't see that. And even when he, in his final stages of boxing, it wasn't that Manny Pacquiao was fighting constantly, right? He would have the what now we now kind of accept in boxing, fighting maybe twice a year. Not exactly a horrific schedule for fighters. I mean, that was pretty much the pace he was at then.
All right, let me just ask you a couple more. We have covered both of these fighters leading up to the fight. We've spoken both of them, at the press conference that Manny did at Mandalay Bay back in May. I asked him if he would consider fighting Mayweather again, and he did not rule that out. Do you think that we could ever see that? Boxing, money, nostalgia, it would make a lot of money. Do you think there's any chance of that?
I think very little at this juncture. Maybe a win by him could gin it up, and I honestly don't think it would do the kind of business. I mean, I announced their first fight, and that was an amazing undertaking on every level, and the energy. Even though at that time people felt the fight was 4 or 5 years past its expiration date, there was still plenty of interest. So I think when you move forward now to it, it would get attention, certainly, because we live in an era where if Mike Tyson can fight Jake Paul and it can get that kind of attention, and obviously Mayweather and Pacquiao could certainly garner a lot of crossover media attention from people that don't normally cover the sport and don't really understand it very much, and there would be some commercial success depending on how much money they paid Mayweather and Pacquiao, but I can't imagine it being the kind of event that their first one was.
I have to say to you, because you brought it up, I'm sorry, I promise one more, then plus one more. Is Jake Paul, in your opinion, helping boxing or not helping boxing at this point?
Promotional companies helping boxing. I see Jake Paul the way I look at Clint Eastwood. I tweeted this out, and some people get mad at me over this, but I'm not the most, as you know, my style is not really too adversarial or bombastic. But
we know what you really think. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah. So the way I look at it is, Clint Eastwood was an atrocious actor who made every movie he was in less good than it could have been. But he's a very good director who has made some very fine movies. Okay, Jake Paul is a medium level, low level potential professional fighter. He's the kind of person that, I've announced Jake Paul fights. He's improved in fights and works hard at it. So let's put that caveat out there. So I don't fault him in that regard at all. As a boxer, he would, if he were fighting regular boxers all the time and he was being brought along like we would expect somebody to be brought along, right now he'd probably be 10-6 against those professional boxers. He lost to Tommy Fury, who is not a great fighter, and that was one of these. Fought a couple of professional fighters. So that's who Jake Paul is as a fighter. So for people to take that part seriously is kind of silly. But I always view the gimmick fights as one-offs. I never feel like they end up adding or taking away that much from boxing. To me, they're all one-offs. However, now we move into his promotional company, which has concentrated very heavily on women's boxing, which I happen to be I've covered and announced probably more women's boxing matches than anybody, and I'm a big believer in women's boxing, and I have been, interested in it for many, many years, well before the current, boom in women's boxing. His promotional company has done some superb work, and the culmination of that, if you will, came, last night went with the big card and that they had in Madison Square Garden, and so I give him all the credit in the world for that.
All right, too bitter. Are you going to predict this fight or not? And then let's tell the folks what you're up to today. Still at going strong and keeping it moving.
And I would have to lean toward. You talking about the Pacquiao Barrios?
Absolutely.
Probably lean toward Pacquiao, maybe a little bit because of his pedigree and the fact that he may pull a rabbit out of his hat. But it's not a. I'm kind of like, up in the air on it because Barrios, if Pacquiao doesn't if the Pacquiao that comes here is an older 46-year-old man who is going to have a hard time with timing and all the rest of it, Mario Barrios is quite capable of boxing for 12 rounds and not getting into trouble if he doesn't get hurt. If Pacquiao doesn't, at any point in this fight, at least stun Barrios, he will lose. He will lose this fight. He won't stand on the outside and outbox a man who's 16 years younger and is by nature a boxer, who is physically bigger than him. So that isn't going to happen. So it's going to have to be Pacquiao being able to have enough of those bursts of offense to kind of stun him and control Barrios.
What are you up to today? What are you doing in the world of boxing?
Well, I am doing the Big Time Boxing USA series on DAZN. Dimitri Salita promotes those. I do a lot of other broadcasts and pay-per-views. I'm going to be doing one on July 18th, a streaming fight from Pachanga. Christy Martin starting up promoting. She's been promoting matches. Now I'm going to be on that stream. Plus, I'm doing my YouTube show on the Salita Promotions YouTube channel, which I interview boxing personalities. We just had Sean Porter as a guest. He, breaking down not only Friday's fight, but the fights that are coming in, fights on Saturday, July 12th. And so we have a lot of guests on there, and I'm doing fights on DAZN and elsewhere. So I'm still very active and enjoying broadcasting, which I like to do, and I feel like I have the same passion and work ethic for it, so it's fun to do.
I love your passion. I love your enthusiasm. Al, last one, I promise. Allegiant Stadium, Canelo versus Crawford coming in September. Is that going to be, I honestly don't know, is that going to be the first fight in Allegiant Stadium? And if it's not, I mean, what an unbelievable, they must really think that that's going to be a big fight, right?
Well, one of the interesting things is they talked UNLV into moving its football game and UNLV now is a school that matters in college football.
On the up.
2 great seasons, and we never thought we'd hear that in our lifetime, did we? I've been rooting for the Rebels for 30 years since I moved out here, but they literally got them to move their football game to a week that doesn't even exist in college football. So the idea of a big boxing match in Allegiant Stadium makes perfect sense, right? I mean, big concerts are held there all the time. And I believe they feel, I mean, when you put a fight in a bigger stadium, whether it's an outdoor stadium or in this case an enclosed one, rather than a 20,000 seat, normal auditorium, you believe you can sell more than those 20,000 tickets. Everything indicates, and I don't know, they may even already have more than that. I went on the just out of curiosity, went on the website to look at tickets, and there are a lot sold. So clearly, they're going to do more business than they could have filled in the T-Mobile or in one of the big arenas like it. So,
can they fill that place, you think?
Pardon?
Can they fill that place, you think?
Fill it? I don't know. Maybe. I think they'll come close. They'll be over that 30,000 threshold that it would take that means you need a bigger venue. But it's conceivable. I mean, here's the thing. This is a fight that is going to get crossover attention from the mainstream sports media. I mean, boxing is it. There are certain fights that get that attention, that get the crossover attention in which the mainstream sports media in America covers it. And this is one of those fights. And once that happens, then all things are possible to you. I mean, whether this is truly the best match. I mean, you and I could probably sit here and name 4 or 5 matches that we're more convinced would certainly be we know would be a little better. Which is not to suggest Canelo and Crawford isn't going to be a good fight. Could very well be. It might be a great fight. But we can name 4 or 5 that we're more sure would be great. But they're not as marketable as to the mainstream and sports fans and casual boxing fans as this one is.
Yeah, here's my response. It might last about like 1 round, but Canelo versus Paul, I mean, come on, you know? I mean, the reality of what it comes down to. Barrios said to me a couple weeks ago how like he believes that what Paul needs to do is he needs to fight the top 15 in his weight division, and then we'll see what he's really worth. Agreed?
Yeah, well, I mean, even the top 50. Yeah, not even the top 15. I mean, if Jake Paul wants to be taken seriously as a boxer, then if he just fought the 30th ranked cruiserweight, that would be something, right? I mean, his only forays against real boxers, losing to Tommy Fury, who is below mediocre, let's be honest, and he lost to him. So for Jake Paul to be honestly taken seriously as a boxer, even just beating the 30th cruiserweight would be a step forward. And that would be, you know, but we live in a different era now. We live in a different era in every aspect of our lives. And I'm not going to get too heavy in the weeds on this because then I'll definitely get people yelling at me.
Go ahead.
Whether it's government or entertainment or sports, it only matters if you can sell it, period. And there are so many more ways to sell things now. We used to have gatekeepers that, I mean, and some of that's good and some of it's bad. We used to have gatekeepers that prevented certain events or artists or anybody from capturing the attention of the public and trying to manipulate and maneuver their message. Now, because of social media, the gatekeepers don't matter very much anymore. And so if you can figure out a way to market it, it can happen. And it will be given validity by someone, even if that someone isn't a person with validity of their own. So that's the reality of what we live in now. And so if they could sell a Jake Paul versus Canelo fight, they could probably have it.
Oh, I think you get a crowd of 65,000 plus for that. No,
you might, and you might sell some big pay-per-views. So it's a question of whether the people that are, how can I put this, the wiser heads, if you will, in quotes, prevail, or their base instincts take over, whether it be the economical ones or if you can't beat them, join them, kind of mindset takes over. And, you know, we're way past the idea that something is, the word inappropriate is now inappropriate because it doesn't matter.
I agree with that. Listen, we're going to have you back for like a whole 1 hour talk sometime. I just love talking with you. I could just talk with you all day about this stuff. You know, the thing of what it comes down to is you just have the viewpoint of seeing it all. So I'm just going to leave you with this last question, I promise. Las Vegas, how do you think we're doing as far as the fight game goes right now?
Well, I think Las Vegas, you know, still has a certain really important allure for boxing, and there will always be major fights here. The volume of fights, but this has probably been going on for a few years, has gone down, and so there aren't as many of the mid-level fights here as there had been before. I mean, part of it is this started a long time ago with the Native American and riverboat casinos around the country that wanted boxing there for a variety of reasons. And now there's the Riyadh season that wants a lot of the big fights to be there in their country, in Saudi Arabia. And the re-entrance of New York as a place for boxing, which it had pretty much kind of fallen off the map as a place for boxing. Now that place is yet another competitor for Las Vegas. But a certain percentage of the big fights and then a percentage of the fights underneath that, I think will always gravitate to Las Vegas. And here's the other thing. For a long time before, the only sports activity pretty much that you were going to have in Las Vegas was boxing. Then that became boxing and mixed martial arts. But that all started to change when, and I did a talk show on, the ESPN affiliate here in Las Vegas in the late 1990s and early 2000s, and we would talk constantly about, could we have even one major league team? Would that even work? Well, now, look, you got the hockey team, you have the football team, WNBA champions, former champions, and baseball is coming here. A rebirth.
F1 on the Strip.
Pardon?
F1 on the Strip.
F1 on the Strip. This has become a mecca of sports activity. And one of the things that does is when you have that kind of competition, it means boxing isn't the main driver of sports coming in here. So it isn't like it was before where that was the one way to get sports people in your casino and involved in it. So it diminishes boxing a little bit in that sense. But there will never be a time where I don't think where a number of fights, major ones and some minor ones, won't be in Las Vegas because it offers too much of an allure. It's convenient. The fans want to come here, and I think there'll always be major boxing here.
I want to give you the final comment today's panel. What did you think of Bob Santos and former boxer Gary Stretch going back and forth? What did you think?
Well, they had an interesting give and take. Obviously, Gary has Bob is actively involved in the fight, and Gary has a different viewpoint. You can feel that. So that's what boxing makes boxing fun. You get a different take on things, and it's much more personal at this point. Well, I don't know. I'm going to say it is, but it's pretty personal to Gary. It looked like, based on his passion about Pacquiao. Their back and forth on it. It kind of demonstrates what kind of can make boxing fun sometimes. And we had the classic case of one person with a visceral, emotional approach to what was going to happen, and another with a more practical, especially given that he's the one trying to make it happen, and Bob Santos, a more practical approach to what they were talking about. And, that's part of what makes life interesting.
Al Bernstein, thank you so much for being on today's panel with Bob Santos and Gary Stretch. I just wanted to give you your own little moment here, obviously, and let you talk about this in great detail without those guys interrupting. I felt like we were, I love them both, but we were there on the sidelines, and it's time to let the media guys have a moment. Thanks so much for joining us and being back on CY Interview Day. We'll have to have you back again soon, and thank you so much for that. And hang on with me.